Sure, Vivan. I'll start off in a minute. Would anybody else like to share what they're working on? Awesome. So, hi everyone, and welcome to the session on the Web3 technology stack. Now, before I start with that, I had a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. So, one is I've started something called the Crypto Investigation Challenges. So, I've posted the first challenge today. So, do try it out, and you have over the weekend to get the answer. And then on Monday, we'll declare the winner, and there's a small prize that creator has also sponsored for that. So, definitely give it a shot. Another thing I was asking you people, if we to give me ideas about, suppose we do a live code building where we identify a project and then we actually take 2-3 hours and build the project out. Obviously, we will not be able to build it for production level, but at least from a minimum viable product or a proof of concept, we'll be able to build that. So a lot of you have sent in some ideas. If you haven't already, just send the ideas to me. You can connect to me on any of the social platforms, and then next week we'll plan out something on that. Now, for today, what we are going to do is, let me just quickly share my screen. Give me a second. Okay, so on your screen, you should be able to see something called Web3 Tech Stack for Developers. Just give me a quick yes if you can see that. Awesome. So first, let me explain what this really means. So the first thing that we've got to understand, there are a lot of misconceptions about what we do in the Web3 space. So a lot of people presume that we all the time have to constantly, write Solidity code, for example. That's not true, because a lot of the times, whatever we are creating, we actually use ready-made tools for it. So it's not like we need to set up our own, say, Ethereum nodes, or then we need to do Solidity programming for everything. Not at all. There lots of these tools, and some of them are zero code tools, which means you can just point and click and build stuff. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of that. Now, before we go into it, it's important for you to remember that there are actually many types of blockchains. So here I've talked about L1, L2, and bridges. There's also something called L0. Let me just quickly explain to you. L1 blockchain means a blockchain which can settle transactions on its own without needing anybody else. L0 allows you to spin up L1 blockchains, and L2 blockchains, like Polygon and all, they need an L1 to settle transactions. So for example, a Polygon would need an Ethereum. So one of the most important things that we need to do before we even start building a project is to identify which chain we are going to use. L1, L2 would depend upon what you're trying to do. And what bridges do is they connect different chains. So, different blockchains don't natively talk to each other. So to interact between two blockchains and to move tokens from one to another, that is where bridges come into the picture. But be very careful when you're using bridges. They get hacked all the time because they are a very big target for hackers, because it's a huge amount of crypto that they hold. But you have to know that there are opportunities like this for you to use bridges also. Any question? Is it all clear? Give me a quick yes, or if you have a question, just post it. I hope you guys are able to hear me. Awesome. Okay. So Keshav's question is about L0. Yeah. So L0, one example could be Polkadot. So what we do is we can use the Polkadot relay chain to create parachains or parallel chains. Now these parallel chains are quite independent in what they do. So we can say these parachains are L1s and Polkadot is the L0 which we need to actually get those up and running. Hope that clarifies your doubt. Now, one very important thing that I want all of you to remember is Chainlink. So Chainlink is an Oracle service. It's one of the best services that there is. Now, I'll tell you why we need it. There are many times that our blockchain-based app or our blockchain or smart contracts may need data from the outside world. Now, because smart contracts can't do HTTP requests, we need oracles like Chainlink. They can bring data from outside to the blockchain or to the smart contract or take it out. So for example, if you want price feeds of stock markets, crypto prices, aeroplane landing times, you name it, any of these kind of feeds, you need to use platforms like Chainlink for it. There is a cost to it, obviously, and there is a whole bunch of providers who get fined if the data that they provide is incorrect. So Oracle is a very important thing that we need to use most of the time. How can we know which chains are on which layer? Anupama, yeah, that's a good question. So most of the popular chains that you hear of, so as you can see on my screen, Algorand, that is a permission chain. So there are certain features it offers which an Ethereum won't. Like in Algorand, you can lock assets. If the court orders, then assets can be frozen and transferred compulsorily. So Algorand is a popular permissioned L1. Avalanche, Bitcoin, BNB, Cardano, Ethereum, Litecoin, HiFi, and Polkadot. All of these, so Polkadot is sometimes also considered L0. Solana, Tezos, all of these are L1s. And L2, the most famous ones you can see, Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon, Stacks, and ZK Sync. So usually in L2, you'll probably end up using Arbitrum or Polygon. That's the most popular, but if you're building on top of Bitcoin, then you may end up using Stacks. So the reason that we choose between L1 and L2 is L1 can be slow and costly. Example is Bitcoin and Ethereum. L2 makes it cheaper and faster. So Stacks is the L2 for Bitcoin, Polygon is L2 for Ethereum. So depending upon the use case, we need to choose. Vivan says, where do you see the opportunities these days in building infra for Web 3.0? Sure, Vivan, that's a good question. Although I feel the infra space is also kind of now saturated, because like some of the things that I'm talking about here, let's look at the node infrastructure. So you have Alchemy, BlockCypher, Infura, QuickNode. What they let you do is they let you connect to blockchain nodes very easily. So now even I think Google Cloud is going to be offering Ethereum node service. So when people like Google are already in the play, it's a little difficult to kind of try to compete with that. So for example, if you want to look at decentralized storage, now there we already have 4 leading things. So we have RV, Filecoin, IPFS, and SIA. So they're really good at providing you decentralized storage. And then you have for decentralized compute, we can use things like Akash and LF. So I think it's kind of quite saturated as of right now. Hope that answers your question. Anything else you guys would like to know at this stage? Okay. Now, one very important thing I'd like you to remember is that authentication is definitely a very big issue, not just in the blockchain world, but in the regular world also, because that is where things usually go wrong. So in Web 2, it is a good practice to use things like Google login, Facebook login, Amazon login. In a way, you are outsourcing the pain of user authentication to these platforms. So you have different ways of doing it, and Google, Facebook, and all are very popular for that. If you don't want to use that, or let's say you're talking about Web3, then another option is MetaMask. So what happens in that is, as you know, MetaMask is a very popular wallet. So you can authenticate people based on their MetaMask or their address. So when someone visits your site and they want to do something and you want to identify who they are, you can authenticate with MetaMask so that it pops up in their screen. They can digitally sign the request and you can come to know their address, authenticate them, allow them to do different things without the need to maintain usernames and passwords. So in Web3, we are trying to move away from the concept of username and passwords. And instead of that, we are trying to use things like your crypto keys to authenticate you and allow you to do stuff. Abhishek wants to know if MetaMask, there would be any fee for this. No, there is no fee that is being charged. So what happens is, Abhishek, that's a good question. So the fee comes into the picture when you're transferring assets. So when you're trying to move a token, let's say on the Binance Smart Chain or Ethereum or whatever, then there's a cost. But when you're simply signing transactions like this to log in and approve certain actions, there is no fee on that whatsoever. Any other questions? Just let me know. Kavita says no one would remember. Yeah. Kavita, that's a good point. So here again, you've got to realize you don't have to remember these addresses. So what happens is, suppose you're using the Chrome browser, let's say, and you have your MetaMask on there. Now you have multiple accounts in it. Each account can be given a name. So you don't need to remember the addresses. The moment you go to authenticate in a site, your MetaMask pops up and you can just choose from the drop down which account you want to authenticate with. And of course, ENS is a good idea, but then there is a large cost to it also. So you got to pay a lot of money to actually keep it. Honestly, I haven't taken any of these because somebody else booked my name beforehand. So I would have taken rohas.eth, someone else booked it. So I didn't end up using it. And honestly, I haven't found the need for it yet. Hope that's clear. Any other questions or just give me a clear? Okay, Vivan says, what are some tools today that provide a migration from Web 2 to Web? Uh, well, that's a very good question. To the best of my knowledge, there are no tools for this. The reason for that is, see, let's say you have all your data in a private database. Now, suppose you want to move part of it to, let's say, a blockchain. Now, blockchains are not built to handle large amounts of data. So there's very little data that you can actually move. Now, you want to move it to IPFS and all. What you've got to remember is in IPFS, the naming system is totally different, right? So where in Web 2, we use location-based links. So, you know, www.rohasnagpal.com/ and then we open something. But in the world of IPFS, we actually use hashes, which uniquely identify a content, and then you don't know where in the world that content is actually stored. Now, because of this fundamental difference in the way in which they work, it's a little difficult to have a tool to do this migration. So a lot of the migration we need to do ourselves. Yuganka wants to know about ENS. So Ethereum naming service. So consider it like domain names. So, you know, there was a time when the world only used IP addresses. When the internet was very new, it was basically created for research scientists. So everyone connected to each other based on an IP address, like 10.10.10.20, for example. Now, because the number of computers are very few, there was a file which every computer had, which had the IP addresses of all the other internet computers in the world. As the number grew, people realized that's not practical, and that's when the DNS system came, domain name system. So now instead of an IP address, you just say hotmail.com, google.com, whatever you want to do. Now, ENS is the Web3 equivalent, where once you get this address, you can link it to your wallets, your website, and a lot of things can all be accessed using your Web3 address or ENS and unstoppable domains. There are multiple options for this. Vivan wants to know also, could you shed some light on how decentralized storage works? Is it going to be? Yeah, Vivan, that's a very good question. So yes, decentralized storage actually competes with AWS and Google Cloud, and it is much, much cheaper. So what happens in that is, like, if you take an example of Filecoin. So Filecoin is like, it is considered as the Airbnb for data storage. So just like in Airbnb, if you have a room empty in your house for a few days, you can rent it out. If you have extra storage space for a small amount of time also, you can rent it out on Filecoin. So Filecoin is the incentive layer for IPFS, Interplanetary File System. So anybody can be a part of it, and you can temporarily store data for others also and make some money out of it. And yes, in my experience, you would get 30 to 60% lower fees when you're using decentralized storage like IPFS and Siacoin. It's much cheaper. But then, of course, some of the services that you get from Amazon that you may not be able to get here, because Amazon does a lot more than just data storage. So here for data storage, we have specific ones. And then we also have similarly Airbnb for computing. And that is where decentralized compute also comes into the picture. Abhishek wants to know, if I want my laptop, if I rent my laptop space and then might switch off the laptop. Yeah, Abhishek, that's a good question. So basically, as long as you're storing data for some time, you get paid for it. When you're not storing it, you don't get paid for it. But then the data gets distributed in many different places. It's quite a complex system. So, I mean, maybe we could do a session later going deeper into decentralized storage. Kavita says decentralized databases would cost high. So I'm not really aware of any decentralized database service yet. You could use something like MongoDB for that on your own if you want. I'm not aware of someone doing it yet. Keshav says reliability would be an issue in decentralized system. Like if, okay, so Keshav, that's a good question, but no, it doesn't have that kind of a problem. Now, it's a little difficult for me to explain why decentralized storage doesn't suffer from this problem. Like I said, maybe I'll plan a separate session on that itself. Decentralized storage handles big data. Yes, Gautam, it does. So you can handle huge amounts of data on this. Ravindra want to know, if you create a Web3 app decentralized and use AWS storage centralized. Ravindra, that's a good question. So see, this decentralized term is kind of a little bit difficult to define. Like even when we talk about Bitcoin, it's not really as decentralized as people think, because ultimately it's not you and I who write the code. There's a very small group of developers who maintains the code base and pushes to the GitHub. So in that way, we can say it's very restricted. Then there are only some few 4 or 5 mining pools which control more than 50% of the mining. So nothing is really purely decentralized, because that's just not how the world functions. But if you create a decentralized app, what you've got to understand is, what do you mean by decentralization in your app? Now let's take an example of MetaMask. So would we say that MetaMask is decentralized? If you think that MetaMask is decentralized, give me a yes. Yeah, can all of you just answer that? So do you think MetaMask is decentralized? Okay, so some of you think yes, some of you think no. So now we have to go to one particular location and download that extension or software and put it into our browser. There's one company which runs it. So in that way, it's centralized. But then it's non-custodial. And that is why you have access to your own keys and nobody else. Like MetaMask doesn't keep your key. So MetaMask is centralized but non-custodial. So now in this case, try to imagine what is more important to you when it comes to your wallet: the fact that it's centralized or not, or the fact that it is non-custodial. So for me, the non-custodial is important, not the fact that it is run by one company and not a group. So it's a trade-off that we need to make. And then Ethereum, right? Anybody can set up an Ethereum node. Now, what if a large number of people set up Ethereum nodes using AWS service? Does that mean Ethereum has become centralized? No. You are still decentralized because anybody can come and set up nodes. The fact that the nodes are on AWS or Google doesn't make any difference here. I hope that's clear what I'm trying to explain here. So in your app that you're building, you've got to understand what does it do. So suppose you say that your app connects to Ethereum to do things, and Ethereum is decentralized, so my app is decentralized. That's fine. That's an acceptable way of saying it. I hope that's clear. Any questions? Or just give me a quick clear if it's all clear to you guys. All clear? Awesome. So here, for decentralized, or rather Web3 based identity, we have ENS, which someone spoke about, Ethereum naming service, and we have unstoppable domains. And then you have encode and lit also, which is quite popular. Now, the first layer that we spoke about is the blockchain and settlement layer. So here is where your L1, L2 bridges, everything comes in. That's where the blockchain runs, and that's where settlements are happening. Please remember, blockchain is an integral part of a Web3 solution. So if you don't use blockchain, you are not really what we call as a Web3 solution. Then we have the infrastructure layer. So in that, I explained to you, there is decentralized compute, storage, oracles, interoperability layers, identity, wallet key management, and node infrastructure. Node infrastructure is also very important for us to understand, because when we are building stuff, sometimes it is not feasible for us to use other people's nodes, and we want our own node because we are going to make that many requests, for example. So at that time, one option is you actually install your own node, or then you rent out infrastructure from Alchemy and other such, and Infura, and we are setting up our own node, but they are taking care of it. So it is their hardware which is used to run the node, and then we connect to that node and we pay a monthly fee rather than paying a per transaction kind of a cost. So that's the second, or the infrastructure layer. Then we have the third, which is the developer tools. Now this is really important for us. Again, we have to remember that we don't have to write our own code most of the time, unless what you're doing is very, very unique. It's not really been done by anyone else before. You could use third-party tools to build. Like for example, I think Keshav was mentioning that he is using Tatum. So what Tatum does is, it makes it easy for you to use ready-made APIs. So suppose you want to generate a wallet, and you want to generate the seed phrase. Now one option is you write your own code, chances are you may make a mistake and then you may get hacked. Better is you use a service like Tatum. A lot of it is free. Above a certain level, you pay for it. And you just simply have to call their API from your code. And they will give you the ready-made code for all different programming languages, whether it's JavaScript, PHP, or any of those. And your life becomes much easier. And you can actually roll out applications in days rather than taking months to do it. So that is where frameworks and IDEs, which are integrated development environment, comes into the picture. So here, Truffle you may have heard about, Moralis, Tatum. These are three of my favorites. So for example, Truffle has a whole bunch of tools in it. So Ganesh is one of them, which allows you to spin up your own Ethereum locally. So you can actually see what is happening in the Ethereum blockchain that you've set up for testing, that every transaction, what is it doing? You actually get access to the entire database of the Ethereum because it's your own version of Ethereum running locally. Now that you cannot do without a service like Truffle because it's very, very difficult to do it otherwise. So if you guys have not started, I would strongly recommend start trying out some API services. BlockCypher, Moralis, Tatum, all of them offer their own API services. We have platforms like Settlement, which are very easy to use. In the past, if you recall, we did a session in which I showed you how to use Open Zeppelin. And they have a very nice wizard where you can just click, 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 and it creates a smart contract for you for all sorts of tokens, right? So that becomes pretty easy to use. So we've done that in the past. Ravindra says, don't start from scratch and stand on the shoulders of... Yes, absolutely, that is a message. There is no point trying to do it from yourself. Like when we are doing programming also, we use ready-made frameworks. We are not actually doing everything from the ground up. So here, when you see Open Zeppelin, they build templates, open source code. You can download and use it. So why would you make your own, which has the risk of vulnerability? The only time we need to write our own code is when we are doing something which is not common. And that's the reason we need to actually write it on our own. So for example, for indexing and querying, you have the graph. For testing, you have a bunch of tools. For analytics, you have really great tools like DeFi Llama, Messari, even Token Terminal. So depending on the application that you're building, you should pick the ready tools to use. So here, that's where the developer tools come into the picture. And then finally, we have the application enablement layer. So this is kind of like the next step, which makes it much easier for you to spin up completely ready applications. So suppose you want to build your own DeFi. So InstaDApp would be a very good tool for that, or Unicrypt would be there. For gaming, you have some ready-made platforms which are available to you. But I would say the most important is this layer. And this is where I want all of you to kind of look deeper into. And for starting off, I would say start off with APIs. They're probably one of the best to use. And what I'm planning to do very soon is I'm planning a workshop kind of a thing where we will get together and build a software, a dApp, to a POC or an MVP kind of a level. Let me just stop sharing my screen for a second. Yeah. So I have two projects in mind based on suggestions which people have already given. One is we could try to build our own non-custodial wallet, something like MetaMask. And the second is a no fakes app. So that means how can we use the blockchain and QR codes to prevent fakes or counterfeiting of medicines, luxury goods like say handbags or sneakers. Those are the two kind of options that we're looking at. Yes, Yuganka, this the diagram that I showed all of you is available as part of the free Web3 course, but I'm also putting the URL here. Give me a second. Yeah, I put the URL in the chat, so feel free to download it. Okay. So these are the two ideas that I had in mind. I'd like some feedback from you guys. What do you think? What sounds more interesting to you? Is it the MetaMask kind of a wallet, or is it this no fake kind of an application? Ravindra says, I've been telling my students no one got Nobel Prize in Literature for inventing a new word or phrase, but uses existing vocabulary. Yeah, Ravindra, that's definitely a very good way of putting it. We don't have to make our own language or make our own words. You're right, we use existing sentences, sure. Yeah, No fake app. Okay, so that sounds good to you guys. So, okay, so I'll tell you here what I have in mind. So, what I have in mind is that, when we talk about things like very expensive sneakers or very expensive handbags, luxury items, there's a lot of fakes. Now, how do you come to know whether it's real or fake? Because the guy who makes the fake probably gets it from China, where the originals are also made. So, looking at it, you can't identify. Now, suppose there can be a unique QR code which is connected to the blockchain, and then any buyer can scan it and immediately come to know whether that is original or fake. And then when they sell it to someone else, that person can also verify, and then the name out of the owner also can change. So you can then actually see a sequence: who owned this first, now who owns it, and the whole chain of custody or ownership can be done. And not just fakes, it can even be used to authenticate art, whether a particular piece of physical art is original, who all have purchased it. So we can build all this together. So it's nice many of you are excited about that particular project. So let's plan it out very soon. I'll give you the details, and then we'll do a session on this. Sure, Abhishek. It's nice. All of you have liked that particular idea. It's like OpenSea. No. So OpenSea basically allows you to create NFTs, right? So that no, that's a totally different use case. Yuganka says something similar was done in supply chain of fish, right from. Yeah, okay. I'll tell you the problem in that, Yuganka, for the fish. See, we can't put a code on every fish. So at most, what you can do is you can authenticate a container of fish. But when we talk about things like expensive collectibles or even medicines, we need to authenticate every single item. So whether it is each and every sneaker, each and every handbag, or each and every medicine box, bottle. So it's going to be a little different from that. Anupama says this would be the end of a multi-billion-dollar industry. Yes, sure. Fakes is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Yes. Although that would be great if fake medicines can be detected. So, Anupama, definitely this same technology can be used for fake medicines also. It can be used for anything. The only point we have to remember is it has to be easy to use. So at the end, when the chemist, pharmacist, trucker, or even the purchaser of the medicine wants to authenticate, it should not be difficult, because then they won't use it, right? Usually the problem in Web3 is things are very difficult. You've got to really be tech savvy to do it. We've got to make it very simple. So can someone using a normal phone and a normal QR code app scan it and instantly verify, or instantly click a button and complete the transaction? So that is going to be our goal to build it. So are you guys up for it? Let's plan it out very soon. Anupama says, like UPI got popular very soon. Yes, why did UPI get popular? Because it's extremely simple to use. All you're kind of doing is exchanging your address, which is kind of like even smaller than an email address. And anybody can then send you money. You don't have to note down IFSC code and bank account number and bank branch and then type it in somewhere. It's super fast and super easy. So that's kind of the approach that we have to take. Like today I posted about, there's a place in Australia which is called Bitcoin Cash City. I mean, they made Bitcoin Cash, that's a crypto called BCH, so easy to use that you walk in and pay for a burger or ice cream or anything with it. But because they are able to make it easy, it's actually become that popular. So yes, I think the biggest problem with Web3 is they're not easy to use solutions. So we've got to make it really easy to use. So I'm looking forward to all of you participating in that. Vivan, I hope we'll be able to do some kind of, breakout rooms while we are doing this session. So maybe we'll plan it out for early December or something. Keshav says someone spent 70 days there using BS. So in Bitcoin City, Bitcoin Cash City, you could survive only on Bitcoin Cash. Viresh says BTC Lightning Network. Yes, BTC Lightning Network is also exactly like that. It's an L2, layer 2, which is built on top of the Bitcoin network. Awesome. Any other questions? Anything else you guys would like to discuss? Those of you who are into the financial aspects of Web3, I'm doing a session at 5 o'clock on crypto valuation. It's the second in the series of lectures, so feel free to attend that. That is also on Creator. Vivan, if you could just post the link for that, that would be great. Anything else you guys would like to know? Okay, so great. So I look forward to that, and I look forward to see how many of you are able to crack the crypto challenge, right? Today I've just posted the first one. So it's level one. It's really easy. So I hope most of you are able to crack it. And then of course I'll start making it tougher and tougher from next. Abhishek wants to know where it's posted. So it's posted across all my social media. So if you're following me on Insta, Twitter, or LinkedIn, wherever, I posted the link everywhere. And I've also created groups for crypto investigators on LinkedIn, Telegram. So feel free to, and WhatsApp. In fact, now WhatsApp is increasing the number of people who can be in a group, and they're also bringing a lot of community features. So I think they're going to compete very well with Telegram. So I've opened a WhatsApp channel also for that. Anupama says the crypto challenge is very interesting. Awesome. Anupama, were you able to crack it yet? Don't worry, you have the entire weekend to do it. I hope all of you are able to crack it soon. Yeah. Okay. See you guys. I'll let you know about the project very soon, and I'll see you guys at 5. Bye bye. Yuganka wants to know about the next hackathon. Sure, Vivan and I will get back to you on that. Bye bye. Bye for now.